So the broadcast has started. Dear participants, we are honored and delighted to have Sri Suresh Prabhu, who is not just a politician, who has been a member of parliament number of times, has been a cabinet minister, but also an eminent scholar. His work is, of course, there for everybody to witness. He has written several papers, and Mr. Suresh Prabhu is one of those individuals whose contribution to the nation and contribution to our economy is evident and will remain so for the years to come. We are really grateful, sir, that you were able to spare time to talk to all the participants of IIMs and IITs who are listening to you, sir. Over to you, sir. Thank you very much, sir.
Firstly, Professor Sharma Saab, thank you very much for giving me this opportunity to meet you and meet your students and other faculty members, though remotely through a virtual form, but still I really appreciate this opportunity and thank you very much for giving me this honor. As you said, IIM Rohtak has become one of the leading management institutions. Leadership always plays a role. So thank you very much for guiding the destiny and the future course of action for this great institution. And I'm sure IIM Rohtak will emerge as one of the top management schools, not just in the country, but over a period of time, one of the better schools in all parts of the world. So I really look forward to that happening soon. And as I've been member of parliament 4 times from Maharashtra in Lok Sabha, and once in Rajya Sabha from Haryana, and once in now I'm from Andhra Pradesh. So since I represented Haryana in the parliament, I'm very happy that this is something which is happening in Rohtak and the district which has adopted when I was a member of parliament as my district for action. So today, I thank you for suggesting a very good topic, logistic and railways, the future vision. We all know that in today's lockdown period, though we are inside our homes, but still our daily necessities have been taken care of. People can eat, we get what we need for our day-to-day life, even during this period. And one must be wondering how it happens. When more or less the world is locked down, how do you get supplies? How does it get delivered? One may say, oh, this happens through e-commerce companies. What is e-commerce company? It may operate through a platform like this, but there has to be somebody working behind it to make that what is transacted on screen happens on ground. And all this happens because of logistics. The logistics is a function as well as logistic is a business model. Logistic is also a very important link between more or less all businesses. We heard, and you are also in Haryana, so there is another very big Japanese company. There are many, of course, in Haryana, but one of them is Maruti Suzuki. Many of the Japanese companies, when you are all management students, they popularize a very good concept of just in time. That you don't have to maintain inventories. What you need on the shop floor will be available to you at a right time when that goods or that particular product is needed in that particular sphere of manufacturing activity. And that just in time could happen only because of logistics. In fact, India's big problem is that logistics is not as efficient as it should be, not as cost effective as it should be. It is one of the problems that the business entities in India face. If we could be as efficient as the Japanese are in this particular manner, Just imagine you have to maintain your inventory. So you reduce your working capital cost. You reduce the warehousing needs that you need. And then again, you are very sure that the product will be available to a customer once it is fully manufactured in your factory at the time that you have promised him to deliver. If all of this can happen, just imagine how Indian business will become competitive. In this today's world, when there are global supply chains ruling the entire business activity, influencing the entire decision-making process, logistics plays a key role to link all this. In India, the turnaround time at the ports, the delivery of goods from one end to another, all have a big room for improvement. And therefore, if the shipper from India has to incur costs which are disproportionate to what others can offer, it doesn't remain competitive. So at a time when we are all thinking about how do you, post-COVID, how do you emerge as a strong economy, a strong country, we have a big potential to do that. Prime Minister Narendra Modi is working on it, and we could really certainly be one of the beneficiaries of this disruption of supply chains. But to make that happen, we have to do many things, but one of the key important element of the action that is needed very urgently is logistics. So time, cost, efficiency, predictability, and guarantee. All of those elements have to be put in place. We never had a logistic as a separate function in the government of India. I thank the Prime Minister that when I was the Commerce Minister, first time ever in India's history, we created a new division called Logistic Division, and that is under the Commerce Ministry. I started preparing the vision for logistic as well as the action plan because we didn't have a time to first prepare vision and then work on it. I said, let's do it simultaneously. So we already are ready with an action plan for logistics. We're launching a logistic portal by the ministry, but which will be used by the private sector, which will help even aggregators, small little players to use that platform and do their business effectively. So logistic is going to be a very key important element, as we cannot see the COVID virus, but we still suffer from it. So we may not see the logistic as a very separate visible activity, but that's the one invisible force which drives the business. So the front-ended part is the business, but the back-ended part is logistics. The key players in logistics is also railways. In India, we move more than 1 billion tons of cargo by railways. Though over a period of time, the nodal share of railway has gone down. The multimodal transport, so what railway handles is relatively low. In fact, there was a time when the railway had virtually a monopoly over handling of cargo. And that is because over a period of time, we used to invest only in railways, predominantly. And then came a time when we started investing into roads and other sectors. As a result of that, our share went down. So today you can see that in transport sector, the railway share has come down to 30% or so, which was almost double only about 4 decades ago. So we have lost out the cargo, but still railway is a very key important player. And therefore railway today, whether it's migrant labor or whether even movement of parcels, everything railway is doing today, even during the lockdown. So railway is the lifeline of India and must be revived. And as a former railway minister, I'll share with you, as desired by my friends in your school, about what could be done about the railways vitalization. As we discussed about logistics, what could be done about railways. Just some interesting numbers. Railway, number of passengers who travel by railway last year were more than global population. This has been there not for last year, for last quite a few years because of round trips. The number of people who travel by railways all put together is more than 8.5 billion. The global population is 7.3 billion. So you can imagine the mammoth operation of railway. So the importance of railway can be understood by this. It has 1.3 million, 13 lakh employees, and I would say almost the same number who are not on the roll of the railways, but they work for the railways in different roles. There are 7,200 stations. There are 22,000 trains which go on every year. That travel 22,000 trains, not every year, 22,000 trains. And then such an important organization has to be very efficient, must be able to cater to the needs and aspirations of the people. But we have seen over a period of time, the railway is facing a lot of challenges. Such an organization must be financially viable so that it can plow back money into the modernization, to an expansion. But the railway had a very typical problem. We had no money to invest into the railways because railways finances didn't permit that. The passenger traffic always loses, and to compensate those losses that we suffer in the passenger segment, the freight, which is the mainstay of railways' main income, they were charged more. It's cost subsidization. I faced a similar problem when I was the power minister. The industrial consumer had to pay for domestic as well as agriculture consumer. Therefore, they were paying more. As a result, they're not becoming competitive. Particularly the energy guzzling companies, more energy intensive businesses, if they have to pay more electricity, how can they be competitive? Because they finally have to sell the products in the same market globally. So railways had this same problem of cost subsidization. And therefore the problem was, because there's no money, there's no investment. There's no investment, that means the network was overstretched. Most of the busy networks are operating for more than 110% capacity. So there is no room for redundancy, there is no time for maintenance. And because the tracks are so full, so crowded, all the time trains are going, there is no possibility of sending more trains. Therefore, when I presented the first full railway budget of Narendra Modi government, I said I'm not announcing any new trains. We announce a new product, but not the new trains from nowhere to nowhere. Because the trains which are running today were running late, not running properly, and therefore we said we'll focus on something else. So first, the underinvestment in railway has to be corrected. If you invest more, that means we'll get more revenues. We'll get more revenues. We'll be able to put more money into the modernization, more modernized railway. More passengers will come, more traffic from cargo will come, and then we'll be able to make more money. And again, that virtuous cycle will start. Today, we are in a cycle where no money, no investment. So therefore, all these future possibilities were not there. So we got money from non-budgetary sources, and we started working on it. The second problem of railways was, and this is something which is a major problem, that I just mentioned about the profitability. Nowhere in the world, of course, railways can be run only on the sole motive of profit. But at the same time, it cannot be therefore be said that we should never make profit. Profit is a different thing, but must generate enough surplus so that you take care of day-to-day expenses, you take care of modernization and expansion. So we prepared a plan as a railway minister, 8,56,000 crores, which nobody could imagine it could ever happen. 5-year plan. And my friends in the railways used to tell me that we can work on all the expansion which are already identified correctly the problem, but to do that we need money. So we got the money for the first time outside of the budget. And by doing that, we said we'll work on those 40% sections which operate more than 110% capacity. The sections which passes through Bihar, which passes through West Bengal, which passes through Uttar Pradesh, they're more populous state and therefore they use more railway, there are more poor people there. Therefore, if you can work on that, it will happen. Second problem, is that India is probably one of the few countries in the world, or probably the only country, where goods traffic and passenger traffic are on the same tracks. So we're working on an ongoing project of dedicated freight corridor, which I provided a lot of impetus and said we'll complete this project in record time. Of course, it got delayed subsequently. But if you do that, then goods train will be taken off from the passenger tracks. So passenger tracks are free, so they can more passenger trains can run. Goods train can run faster and in a predictable time frame, so that more people can rely on goods traffic for railways. And at the same time, because as I mentioned that we were working on those tracks which were overstretched, congested, overcrowded. So all put together with this money going in the right place, we'll have this problem solved. So we started working on that. We also said that to ensure that costing of railway is very important. So we started working on changing the government accounting to make sure that we capture the outcomes of the expenditure that is made. If you don't have outcome, why do you incur expenditure? An outcome is different than output. If you can capture the outcome, then we'll get a desired result. For example, expansion, which I mentioned about it, has to result into finally trains running on time. That's an outcome. The outcome would be that we'll be able to deliver goods traffic on time. That's the outcome. Output is only creating new lines, but that's not enough. We have to work on outcomes, and that is not just true for government, only for railways, but for overall public expenditure. If you don't get outcomes, the expenditure that we incur, and particularly in a country like India, which is capital starved, you're wasting the money and not getting enough out of the resources that you deploy. So we started working on that. And in fact, probably the first time we started working on integrating from budgeting to expenditure to output to outcome, entire chain. Also linking with management information system. I had already launched a project which unfortunately didn't take off after that, after I left, was a project of ERP, Enterprise Resource Planning, wherein all the functions of the railways could be integrated and monitored using digital platforms. So this is one very important area in which we wanted to make sure that railways profitability can be increased, not just by passengers and by freight, which is traditional sources, but by making non-fare revenue. There are so many footfalls and there are so many people who use railways, so we can capitalize and can monetize it. Therefore, we had a completely non-fare revenue directorate created. The idea was to take to 25-30% of the total revenue from the railway should come from this source, and a comprehensive plan was prepared for that. That would ensure that we'll not only rely on passengers or goods alone, but will also non-passenger. Just imagine so many people coming, 8 billion. So that's something which is very important. Also, the data that we generate as a result of that, if you can monetize the data that is created because of the transaction that happen, it could create a lot of value to the railways. And monetizing it would mean railways will have enough finances with it. So we created the direct. And this is what could be the part of a future vision for the railways. There was no lack of customer focus. Passengers are customers. Those who give goods to railways is a customer. So on the first, we said customer need is cleanliness. You imagine the railways 6 years ago and today, railways have become far, far cleaner because I launched a major program of our railways for cleaning it. There were the people, when I launched it, you just SMS, clean my coach. And in 15 minutes flat, the person will come and clean your toilet or whatever is the dirt. And the docket will not be closed unless that person again sends back SMS saying that it is clean. It was not in all trains, but then it must have been proliferated to more trains now. So this was the program that we launched for cleaning, for toilets. We launched a major program for bio toilets, where we can change the bio toilets to traditional toilets, so that firstly there is not human waste, this is discharged on the tracks. and also it gets properly processed, and that will cause public health problem. Because if the tracks become full of human waste, you can imagine the kind of diseases that it will cause for the people to suffer from. So we worked on that. We also worked on catering. It's a major issue. I launched a program called e-catering. That means if whatever food you want to eat from a restaurant name you want to eat, if that restaurant is registered with the IRCTC, the railway's own company which deals with catering, you can definitely get it delivered on your seat. It was a massive change. If our Professor Saab, Sharma Saab, has spent a lot of time in IIM Ahmedabad, so he is dissing Ahmedabad Dhokla. If you want to order a food from a particular restaurant which makes that particular Gujarati food, it will be delivered to him on his seat where he's sitting. The students which are listening to this are coming from different parts of the country. Sometimes they miss their home food. They can get it delivered. So this was a new program that we launched, which to change the catering completely. We started escalators and lifts on the platform, which was never thought of. We thought it was a prerogative of only the rich at the airports. But it was started all over. Free Wi-Fi. This is something, the world's biggest public Wi-Fi program was launched and has helped not just the passengers alone, but also the students. There's so many students coming to the railway station and studying using the public Wi-Fi. Many things like this, but one very important thing is any organization, the feedback is important. And that's one of the major management tools. As a management student, you will understand. Because if you want to take corrective action, how do you know what's gone wrong? And to understand, the feedback is important. Feedback from market, feedback from customers. So in a case of railways, there was no system of giving complaints. There was a very old opaque system of writing customer complaints and keeping in the complaint box. I started a program that you can lodge a complaint on any of the modern digital platforms available to you. You can tweet, you can send SMS, you can call, you can send email, whatever. I will not believe it. We used to deliver it while you are still on the train is problem. Otherwise, normally complaints don't get addressed after years or months. If they are addressed immediately while you're traveling, it makes sense. I got so many examples. I'll give 2, 3, 4 examples, which are because I used to deal with myself personally when I started this. There's a woman traveling with a pregnant woman, traveling with a husband, was harassed by 4 or 5 drunkard young boys. We got them arrested on the next station. There's a man who's got a heart attack, complained about it. At the next station, the doctors and the entire paramedics were present. He was admitted to the ICU. He tweeted from there saying that my life is saved. So the TT was demanding money. I told the complainant, please send proof. He sent a WhatsApp message. We got him suspended on the next station. So many such thousands. A woman was very perplexed because a child was crying for hot milk and the train was marooned with the water because there was a flooding. We got a milk delivered at a seat. Something unimaginable, which so many global multinational corporations wanted to study this model, how it happened. And we developed it on our own, no expert, nothing. We did it on our own and we started working on it. Other important issue, and as management student, you know it better than anybody else, is organization. What finally delivers is a corporate goal, is organization. So railways organization has to be designed in such a way by taking all key elements of railways functionaries together to deliver. So we had organized a Rail Vikas Shivir, which was the Prime Minister's brainchild. In 3 days, we debated from grassroots, absolute grassroots people from all over the railways were involved. 3 days was the culmination, but it went on for a long time, in which each and every person could do crowdsource ideas and workable ideas, not just ideas and ideas. So that is how we felt that organization should be created and working on that. Other key element of railways should be the future railways is sustainability. And sustainability has many elements. Environment is one. It has to be green railways. First ever solar fired railway, solar power. I've started as a railway minister, as a prime minister vision is. We worked on saving 40,000 crores of railways in the 10 years because of sustainability initiative. I directed, because I was also among my 10 different cabinet positions, one was water resources. So I directed that whatever railway land is there, identify the old water bodies, rejuvenate them so that water can be made available. Of course, it's a different thing that when there was a drought in Latur in Maharashtra, I delivered Jaldut trains to deliver water there. But sustainability has to have many components. So we started energy audit, we started water audits, we started many things. But sustainability also must ensure that we work in a way that financial sustainability must happen. Sustainability cannot just be related to this. So safety is another important issue. I had launched a program called Zero Fatality. The railway minister, there were a few accidents. And I therefore worked on why the accidents are taking place. And I discovered that for a long time, the railway tracks were not renewed because there was no time, obviously. I'm not blaming anybody. So I allocated maximum money for railway track renovation, modernization, and also repairs. As a result of that, you can see which was the mission zero accident I'd launched has almost been come to closer to that. We started working on expansion, new lines, doubling, because rather than only new, if you can have, there are two tracks and they have all full, make third track. If the single track is full, make double track. So parallel tracks. So therefore land acquisition, etc. issues become not that complex. The cost of doubling is less than a completely brand new track. So in least time, we can have more capacity added. And we started working on that. We also worked the first time, the world-class, state-of-art diesel and electric locomotive manufacturing has happened in India. And all of this happened, and one of the biggest driving force, I think that should how it should be driving in future, is transparency. In fact, I'll tell you something. The first order I issued as the railway minister was that I will have no single tender ever will come to me, and I'm proud to say I never had the one commercial decision of one tender, because it should be handled by the people, operational people, at level at which the action happens. What is the point of such a large railway operation, which I just gave the numbers which are so mammoth, that it should be centralized and only minister can deal with it? It was not possible. It should not be done. And postings, transfers, appointments, promotions, I said this should be handled at a very professional level. So the whole idea was this should be done in transparent way. So how we handle this process of handing over to GE and Alstom the factories to manufacture high-tech railway locomotives, both in Bihar incidentally. Electrification also we launched. We started a station redevelopment program, and I'm very proud to say that one in Habibganj, in near Bhopal in Madhya Pradesh, was the first ever private station which was developed during time I was minister. Also, we started working Prime Minister Narendra Modi's vision of Gandhinagar in Gujarat. So this is a very modern station will be, and they will be like, as I said, some of the amenities of are available at the railway station, which are like airport. These stations themselves will be like airports. We started working on high speed, so we launched a program called Mission Raftar to increase the speed first. And that there was a special directorate which was created for this. And as I said, we did not start new trains on already busy tracks, but we started new train products. It was Tejas, which is India's fastest train. Whether it was Humsafar, whether it was Mahanama Express, Antyodaya Express, or overnight Uday Express. We started a mission on technology. The railways, future railways should be on technology driven. And technology of all kinds. Just to give example of marrying technology and transparency. We said people, the vendor should get paid through the bank account. He doesn't have to come to the railway. This was a very forward-looking idea. Though I would say it could have been done even earlier. But we started this program, and that has also helped. We created a regulator for the railways to decide, Railway Development Authority to develop railways future, to work on tariffs so that this profitability and the viability and the sustainability issue will be addressed properly, to decide the balance and the trade-off between freight and passengers. That authority was created, and I think we should work on such ideas. Unmanned level crossings, we launched a program to reduce them so that the accidents can be reduced, and we worked on many such ideas. So I think the railways and the logistics are, in a way, the way I mentioned, but there are many more we can talk, but the limited time, because I want to answer some questions. I can say that a future of India lies in creating infrastructure which will be there for tomorrow. The climate change, which causes greenhouse gas emission, is one of the biggest threats to humanity and to the biological life of the world. To reduce greenhouse gas emission, we need to have all economic activities reducing their carbon emission. Railway is a preferred transport because it is far more environment friendly compared to road, because we have seen even in major cities of India today, luckily thanks to the lockdown, we are ambient air quality is pretty good. Otherwise, why it gets bad? It is good today. Why it gets bad? It is good today because there are no cars on the road. The emission happens because of transportation also. Railway is a far better sector in terms of sustainability. So we have to work on sustainable, secure, efficient, comfortable, assured delivery. All these characteristics should be the focal point of railway's future strategy for growth. Logistics is a huge industry. It can create millions of jobs. It needs a lot of professional inputs. I'm sure some of the IIM graduates will eventually take logistics as a career to make it better. And both logistics and railways can actually decide the different contours of new India that we need to create. I'm very sure that particularly during this crisis, when the world is facing a big challenge in terms of how to survive, how to sustain, India could be a shining example if we work on marrying our traditional knowledge with modern known science and technology. We cannot forget either. We should not forget traditional knowledge because that's what gives us the strength and the ethos that are necessary for survival. But we cannot either ignore the future and the best technology available today because that's what will actually make our life even better. But marrying both is the challenge. And that's why people say that every person has brain, all species of the living here, but human brain is important because it has also wisdom. So let's use wisdom to make India a better place. In that, logistics will play a very key role. Of course, many things, but logistics in particular because I'm talking about it. So really, thank you very much for this opportunity. Professor Saab, I can be very happy to answer some questions, but I have some other program, but I'll, of course, as I promised to you, I will answer question and I will promise you one thing. You call me whenever you want and I'll come respond to it as early as possible, as I did in this time. When I learned about that you called me, I said I'll immediately come and do it. So not only because I've done now, you have a right over me. Call me anytime for anything, not just for talking, but even for assisting a great school like this to become even better. I'll be always available to you. And really, really thank you for giving me this opportunity. Looking forward to working with you. All the best. And I'll be there to answer some questions.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much, sir. And thank you for the kind words. So we are very grateful There are a few questions, sir, which have come, and I'm speaking these questions on behalf of the participants who asked. One, sir, the first question is, what do you think is the role of privatization in improving the efficiency and profitability of railways, particularly the private freight terminals, their roles in further development of the railways?
You know, because I think the private freight terminal has a huge potential, as we call it PFT, because if you really look at it, railway has certain strengths. They are laid huge tracks, and they operate trunk routes, they also operate some feeder routes. But traffic originates in different locations. For example, take agriculture. The agriculture production will happen in fields. So somebody who has the ability to bring goods from the field to the track, the manufacturing happens in some factories. If somebody can bring the cargo from that particular factory to the track, there is a synergy, there's a complementarity, there's a possibility of working together. So I think private freight terminals will have a huge potential. The railway has huge lands. They can actually work out an arrangement with a private freight terminal operator. And private freight terminal operator will get benefit because he doesn't have to do end to end. He brings it from one place to the place from where the railway can take over and deliver it to the next destination. So this type of complementarity can help railways significantly, as well as the private freight operator also significantly. So I think there's a huge scope. Privatization per se is already implemented in different forms, but particularly in the freight traffic, I can clearly see there's a huge role for private sector and railways working together.
So, dedicated freight corridor, as we were talking, I think, in my view, in order to give impetus to the economy, this is my view, I think multimodal transportation is going to be very, very important. Dedicated freight corridors, there are always challenges, sir, in putting together a dedicated freight corridor. Do you think, sir, there's a question on dedicated freight corridors using elevated possibilities over the same tracks, which means thereby you are not utilizing, you don't have to acquire new land, but over the same tracks, if there is an elevated creation of another track for the goods trains, is it a possibility, sir?
No, in fact, elevated corridors are being used. A good example is, on a very small scale, of course, is Rohtak itself, where we are using some elevated corridors to avoid the people from suffering, because otherwise their land would have been acquired more. Of course, it's a very small little area, but we have used it in many areas, and we are absolutely right. But dedicated freight corridor is a brilliant concept, because that would mean that only on that particular corridor traffic will move. But as you are correcting, Professor Saab, I fully agree with you that the future challenge for logistics is going to be the land. Because as you know, we have got only 2.2% of the land of the world. And that so little land, we have to put to use on so many different things, because we already got 17% of global population. So we have so much of population, and the same land has to be used for forest, same land has to be used for agriculture, same land has to be used for housing, same land has to be used for infrastructure like railways. So obviously, optimum utilization of land is going to be key issue. If you go to Japan or Korea, the optimum utilization of land is so much that you never know whether you are going to your own house or entering a railway station, because there's common access for so many things. Because particularly in the urban areas, the greater Tokyo area, which has huge population, greater Tokyo, much more than Delhi and Mumbai, is because they have optimized the land utilization. So what you're saying is absolutely right. You have to consider all these options. Of course, there's the cost benefit has to be worked out in individual cases, but that is something which we have to do.
Sir, I'm giving you last two questions, sir. Second last question. Sir, again, a little bit of what I know. Steel on water is the best in terms of carbon footprint. Steel on steel is very good from carbon footprint. Rubber on road is the worst in terms of carbon footprint. But the future is multimodal, sir. So is there a probability of a good plan of linking all of this? I remember there was an initiative of the government of linking rivers and using sea, train, and road simultaneously. Is there something that is envisaged, sir?
No, very good question. Professor, I want to just forewarn you that you're asking a question so sensitive to me because I was handling the interlinking of river. So if you ask me, I will have to speak for another 1 or 2 hours. So it's a very good question. So one day, please invite me again. I'll speak on that subject. But what you're saying is absolutely right. The future is multimodal transport. In fact, for that, is logistic division is important because everybody was working in silos. So the Prime Minister created a division which will now ensure that multimodal transport can become a reality. Because somewhere, we had actually the riverine transport. When the Britishers came and they were working from Kolkata, the transport is to happen through the Hooghly River. Of course, we call it there or we call it Ganga here. All was happening through the river system. And so rivers are one of the biggest importance. So is the sea. So the landlocked part of India is the north and northeast of India. Northeast has become landlocked because the Chittagong port went to Bangladesh and we are left with a chicken neck. But all of this transportation has to be used wherever possible. So wherever we have a railway, we should use railway, river transport, sea transport. And while we do all this, connecting with all this is the road transport. I think that kind of integration and multimodal transport planning is very important. That's why we needed a logistic division like this. The interlinking of river, as you correctly pointed out, we are working on creating river transport, or rather the water transportation. We're also working on using the same interlinking river for flood control, for irrigating 35 million hectares of land. We're also trying to work on making sure that we can generate hydroelectricity through multi-purpose projects like this. So what you're saying is absolutely right. We'll do that, and one day, I think water and all the issues are important. I'm very much keen. One day you invite me, I'll talk about it more. But you are absolutely right, and I'm very glad that we both share the same vision. Thank you very much.
Last question, sir. Sir, this question again says that potential of suburban railway is always there to decongest the cities. Why does metro construction usually take such a long time, longer than envisaged?
Actually, there is going to be, like, take example of Mumbai, where there are almost 8 million people travel by Mumbai suburban railway every day. That much, it's a big number. And that's the reason why our total overall number of railways is more than 8 billion. It's because of suburban railway, because of the round trips. The metro is very good because same reason which we just mentioned earlier, the transportation in the city is one of the cause of reducing or the quality of living or increasing the emissions. So metro is a very good way of doing it. And if you make metro, which goes below the surface, is far more expensive, of course. But then the land issue also is not there. So many times the land becomes a problem. Like in Delhi, when the Japanese worked for constructing Delhi metro, nobody knew that the Delhi metro is being constructed. It happened in a really very efficient manner because Japanese realized that, and most of the Delhi metro, now the new phases, we are going above the ground. Otherwise, all of them were below the surface. So it happened very effectively and efficiently. So I think we'll have to do that. Of course, the geography will play a key role, how the geomorphology, land, etc. will determine whether we can go below the surface. But I think metro is a future, and it's many cities now are developing metros. I think we'll have to work on some more efficient operation. But point is well taken that we definitely need, for future urban transportation, metro is one of the very, very important interventions.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much, sir. I know you are constrained for time, and despite your busy schedule, you were able to come, sir. We are very, very grateful, and I'm sure that all the students and all those other participants from various corners who have attended this talk have learned so much. And if nothing else, there is positivity that you have given to everybody that we are taking all necessary steps towards creating a climate which is friendly for boosting our growth and development in our nation, sir. Thank you very much, sir. So kind of you, sir. We are grateful.
And Professor, I promise you, whenever you want to invite me, I'll be there. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.